Tell us your name.
Walter Samuel Bacchus.
Where are you originally from?
Well, my parents were born in St. Vincent, but their parents, which is my grandparents, they came directly from India. On my father's side, my father, which is my grandfather on my father's side, he was brought here from India. He was kidnapped. As a matter of fact, I have this book, which is the Kingways history, right? And as a preliminary, I will just read a little bit. This carries some of the stories in India. He said, in the time of Frederick the Great and Pitt, Britain was busy in Canada and India, a new world of the West and an old world of the East. But what do we mean by India? Big question. He said, while Britain was still an unexplored island, lying on the edge of the known world, and peopled by half savages, India even then had its fine cities, splendid buildings and temples, and untold riches. That was India. There is where my roots are. Sadly, something happened in the history of India, that at one time India was taken over by a foreign country, Britain, and millions of people lived just what we call hand-to-mouth existence until they got their independence in 1947. Well, India is on its way back now, on its feet. So yes, our most famous religious teacher, Buddha, had lived 500 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. It went on further to say, the peoples of India, you notice what he said, peoples? The peoples of India, however, have never yet become one nation like the British or the French. There have always been many tribes differing widely in color, creed, and language. A great event in Indian history occurred about the time that Norman William was attacking England. India was suddenly invaded by a horde of soldiers who swept through the Afghan pass and the northwest frontier, India's weakest point. That is now part of western Pakistan. The name of that pass is the Khyber Pass. The invaders were followers of Muhammad, and they soon fastened their rule upon the native people. Again and again, during several centuries, India was attacked by similar invaders. They imposed each time a foreign rule over the people, whom they wanted to convert to their own faith. This was a difficult task. Most of the people were Hindus, and the Hindu religion, which is a system of caste, differs very widely from that of Muhammad. And that still exists. That's why in 1947, they divided India into three parts: East Pakistan, West Pakistan, and India in the middle. East Pakistan has broken away from the West. They can call themselves Bangladesh. West Pakistan is still there, and they are more or less not on friendly terms with India. Every now and then they have dispute, because one of the areas that India got, Kashmir, is inhabited mostly by Muslims. And that was a very stupid thing for them to do, the British at least. They should have had Kashmir attached to West Pakistan with that vast amount of Muslims, because they will never agree to live in peace with the Hindus. My grandfather was a Hindu. Now, at one time, there was a mutiny in India, which was called the Indian Mutiny. If you look here, Mr. Harry, this is a map of India. That's Afghan. That is Kashmir, the same place I'm talking about. This is where you call West Pakistan. Here is where you call East Pakistan, right, and India in the middle. If you notice, India in 1792, all these territories here were independent territories. Because look the thing here. British territory, the shaded part, dependent state, Indian princes, the white area. England occupy mostly on the eastern side here, with a small part which is called Baroda, or some name. But look at this. India in 1858, if you notice, look at where the shaded area reached now. It stopped there, but it has gone right on. And down here, it has spread. In the middle, it has spread all around here. That means to say independent states have been taken over by the British. If you notice here, there's a small state here, I circle it, AJMIR. That's the state that my grandfather came from. My grandfather was the only son of the family. The others were 3 daughters. And according to Hindu customs, as long as there is a son in the family, the son will continue the dynasty, take over. My grandfather was born in 1840. In 1858, he was 18 years old. He was being trained to take over from the parents as the ruler of the state. One of the things that he had to do was to be very versed in their religion. One day, while he was coming from a theological school, he was kidnapped by Muslims from the instigation of the British. They kidnapped him, took him to a railway station, and took him away. He has never seen his home, his parents, and he doesn't know what had become of them. He was kept and trained. The train went to the nearest seaport. There was no ship leaving at the time. They had that young man from train to train for 2 weeks, going from seaport to seaport, until eventually they found a ship in Madras here, leaving for St. Vincent, for Argyle Estate. At that time, ruled by a Scottish man, the name of William Smith. He was taken on board the ship and brought to St. Vincent, landed here, taken to Argyle, and there is where he remained, got married afterwards. He resigned himself to fate. He got married, had children. One of them, the 3rd son, was my father, and he died in 1930 at the age of 90 years. 90 years. When he came to St. Vincent, he was taken to Argyle and was allotted to him a house. The other Indians who came on the ship were indentured workers. The first week, beginning of the week, he went out with the others to say, well, they will have to give him some work to do. They called him aside, and Smith told him, he said, look, you are not to do any work. I have instruction that I will give you an allowance every week. Well, he did not know what to do. He accepted that for a little while. But then he thought of it. He said, that means I am living off charity. So one day he went to Smith and said, they called him Massa. He said, Massa, I don't want to live on your charity. Give me work as the rest of my countrymen, and I will feel much better to know that I work for what I receive. Well, the only thing that they could have done was to give him the easiest job on the estate. That is a grass knife. You know, the carved grass knife. And they put him, they say, well, look, you're not going in the field to use hoe or anything. You take this grass knife, and along the borders of the cane field, there would be grass. Cut the grass in bundles and just pack them, put them by the roadside, and a cart will come and take the stuff to feed the horses. The father told him, you're not to work after 12. That's the end of your day's work. When the factory whistle, which is when they blow the steam off at 12 o'clock, and the estate goes for an hour lunch, he said, that's the end of your work for the day. You go home and fix your meal. Well, that continued. He was only a young man of 18 years. Well, he continued in that life for some time, until eventually, when he became big, he said, well, what must I do? I will have to get married and establish myself with a family. Well, a family came, and on board there were some Gokul, the Gokul family. They are now part of that family are the Thomases over at Acres and Calder. And he chose a young lady, and he got married. And as a matter of fact, the other Indians didn't call him Rambala Singh, they call him Raja, because that's how they look at him. He was a Raja to be. When they had their differences, many of them couldn't speak English properly. They will come to him, and he will try and settle them as much as they can, and so on, until eventually he got permission from Smith to open an adult school in the afternoon. So when the workers finish working, in the afternoon he has a small bell. He will ring the bell in the village, and they will gather at his home, and he will teach them quite a bit of English and how to make out little receipts and add and subtract and read and things like that. As a matter of fact, when he couldn't carry on any longer because of age, my father was the one who took over that until when he left and came up to Glenside here. My father, after he got married to my mother, in the same year, they introduced the island cotton because sugar was declining. With the invention, the Germans discovered that they could have get sugar from beetroot, which is a vegetable. They get sugar from that. So cane sugar was declining, so they brought in cotton. Well, my mother had just got married and had her first child, and you might have to call it a decree was passed on the estate that all the women will have to go out and pick the cotton. Cotton picking usually start around February, around this month, and it must finish in April, the ending of April. The ending of April, all the fields have to be chopped down, the trees, and burnt to prevent any sort of disease from growing up. Especially there's a bug, a red bug, they call cotton bug, usually prevalent in those days. Well, my father objected to the fact that his young wife will have to leave a young baby to go and pick cotton. And he said, my wife is not going to pick any master cotton. And he didn't say it behind back, he spoke openly. He said, I married my wife to look after my home and my child and myself, and she's not going to pick any cotton. To spite him, the house they were living in was a state house, a small board house.
It was in Argyle.
Argyle. They sent carpenters and they took off the windows and the doors. They didn't tell them, well, okay, clear out and go in the street. Because my father had no land and nothing at all. They couldn't do that. But to make it difficult and to see if he will change his mind, the carpenters took off the windows and the door. So my mother had to go and stay with her parents with the little baby, and my father slept in the house of his father. My father heard that Ponette was selling some small houses at Diamond, and he had a little saving. So he went down there and he bought one. Where would he put it? He had no land. Someone told him, go and ask the Roman church, because they had bought half an acre of land, as they used to call it, the land of refuge. And my father put his case to the Roman priest, and the Roman priest said, Bacchus, this is God's land. This is not Smith's land. He cannot put you off. Go and break your house, choose a spot, break your house and erect it there, and no one can move you more than God. And so that's what my father did. He left the estate and he bought this house and he built it there and lived on the church land. And he had the first child that was born at Argyle, 1, 2, he had 3 sons there and 2 daughters, before he heard that this estate owned by a Gunsam, an Indian man called Gunsam, was selling, and with his savings he came up and he bought 5 acres of land and left the church land and came up here.
So where you're living today is where your father bought?
Where my father, yes. That's why I will never leave
here. To this
here.
day you still live
Right.
here.
It is a token of loyalty to my parents that I remain. When I came from England in 1971, they were already dead. My father died at the age of 72 in 1952. My mother died 11 years after, 1963. I was in England at the time. I had 16 years there. I arrived here back in 1971, and the land was here. And I told the rest of my family, I said, I'm going to occupy this land, build a house, and this will remain in the family as long as we possibly can. And here is where I am. And I'm 93. Yes.
Yes, 93 is quite a ripe age to live to. Tell me about your family though, in terms of the surnames on your mom's side and your dad's
Oh,
side.
yes.
Yes.
My grandfather on my father's side was Ram. Ram in Hindu mean king. Is just as you might say Her Majesty in English. Ram means king, ahead. Ram Balat Singh. So the end of my name should be Singh. But according to the Hindu customs, when a boy child is born and he is christened or baptized, as we say, he is to take the name of his godfather. The thing is, my grandfather had a friend at Stubbs a black man by the name of Bacchus. They were very good friends. So when his children born and decided to be baptized, the two before my father was his third son, he asked Bacchus to be your godfather.
And those days you took your godfather.
And they took their godfather title. The two in front, my father and my father. Those, it is not compulsory. As a matter of fact, if you want to take it, continue with it, you take it. But they like the name Bacchus, you know. So those three sons of my father, my grandfather, took the name Bacchus. Two of them settled up in Richland Park. And my father settled here. There were others who did not take the names. Some remained Bullock. Because there was one who remained down at Yambu. That was one of my uncle. He retained the name Bullock. There's one at Calder. He also retained the name Bullock. There was another uncle over at Calder. His godfather was Roberts. Well, he took Roberts. But the one, which is, do you know Ian Bullock?
Yes, yes.
Ian's grandfather now, his godfather was Samuel. So when he became big, he did not like the name Samuel. He said, I prefer to remain as Bullock. So he remained as Bullock. But the thing is in the register, the government register, he was already registered there as Samuel. And some of his children went abroad. About 4 or 5 months ago, I was home here when a group of them came from Trinidad, came here, visited Ian, and wanted to know a little bit about the family. Ian could not tell them very much. So he sent them to my son, who was a teacher, living at Diamond, Jonathan Bacchus. Jonathan didn't know very much neither. He sent them to me. So they came here, just like you come, and we sat down and I told them the whole story and so on, how was a custom, and they were quite happy to get that information, and they went back to Trinidad with that. Many of them got married to some white-skinned people, because some of the children they came with here were very, very much white, just like Europeans, you know. I believe they were from Venezuela.
Okay.
Yeah, from Venezuela. So I'm telling you, that is how it is. We continue here. On my mother's side, my mother was a Durant. She was a Durant. And my grandmother and my grandfather, they were from different parts of India. I think they were a little bit more to the north, around the area where the Sikhs live in. My grandfather on my mother's side was a very big, tall, strapping man. And they came up here and lived up here too, and they bought land from the same man, Gonzab, and they died many years ago.
Okay.
Yes. Well, we are here. We went to school. My backup brothers, they got married and so on. We went to school. I started to teach when I was 16 years old, a schoolboy. In 1943, I had just completed and passed my school evening certificate. That's the first time they brought that exam in school, 1941. I sat it. A Saturday, we went to Tongue at the grammar school and sat that exam, and I passed. 2 years after, the inspector of school, C.W. Prescott, he came and he asked me, he said, Bacchus, would you like to try your hand at teaching? I said, well, I don't mind, sir. He said, look, we had no school in Greg's. And we were trying to build a school in Greg's. He said all these children in Greg's had to go down to Lomans. And it is very difficult for the small one. So we are building a junior primary school in Greg's. And I would like you to go up there to join the teacher. There was one teacher, fellow Williams. He was from Newgrounds. But they brought him from Marriaqua. He was down the Keys. From Marriaqua to take charge of that school. So with the help of 3 other girls, 1 from Baraboo and 2 from Greg's, I went up there for 6 months. From January 1943 to the ending of June, and I assisted in establishing that school in Greg's for the first time. Well, I was brought back to Marriaqua, and there is where I did most of my teaching. And in those days, they had what you call the pupil-teacher exam system in school. I passed my exam and my Cambridge and so on. But in those days, I got married in 1947, and I started having a couple of children, and I find, well, I will have to look for greener pastures. So I left, and I got a job as the overseer at Argyle. O.W. Ford, Lawyer Ford, we used to call him, was the owner of the estates then. There was Mount Pleasant, there was Argyle, there was Escape, Yambu, but he had a lot of debts. He owed Kassan, Corey, a lot of money. So he went to the cooperative bank in Trinidad, which we call the Penny Bank, and they loaned him the money to pay off Corey, under one condition, that he sell off some of the estates to pay them back. So he sold part of Mount Pleasant and a little bit of Stubbs, because Stubbs was one of the estates too. He sold Escape and Yambu. And the rest, he had most of it in our route. So I walked down there with him as an overseer for some time. The manager was his stepson, Walter Briggs. You must have heard of Walter Briggs. Yes, because he married to a white woman. The white woman was the widow of a lawyer in England. Her husband died, and they had just one son, that was Walter Briggs. Well, during the war, the mother sent him for safekeeping to Canada, where she had a sister was staying. So Walter grew up in Canada during the war days. So after the war, and he became a big man, they brought him down here to take charge of the estate. Well, I went down there and I worked with them for some time, and then I left. After I left, I worked with the government. The first road transport officer Public Works ever had, it was me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there, and then fellows were going to Britain. I said, well, I'm going to throw myself abroad. So in 1956, I booked my passage and went up to England and spent 16 years there. I came back 1971. Then I started to work with British American as an agent. At that time, T.Y. Bacchus was the manager. That is K. Bacchus, Batty's father. Family to mine too, because T.Y. father and me, a first cousin. I had to call his father uncle. So I worked there with British American for some years, but then joking, William Barbadian people came and put down some asphalt factory right down at the bottom there, mixing plant and so on, and they wanted a good timekeeper. So I left British American and I worked here because I was living right here and the job was right here, you know. So I worked there until they removed, and then with that I just retired and so on. Yeah.
What do you remember about growing up with your time growing up, going to school, the community you grew up with, and your family, close family, etc.? What do you remember most about those things?
Well, my family, as a matter of fact, the Methodist Church, with their missionaries and so on, they were very active trying to convert most of the slaves and so on. And the thing happened after slavery was abolished. The same thing happened with the Indians, because many of them, because Hindu is not a Christian religion. I usually refer to it as pagan, you know. And my parents, they did not hold on to the Hindu custom at all, because they had the Roman church very close to Argyle on this side, and they had the Methodist church at Mooncope. So many of them attended church, the Methodist church especially. So my whole family, more or less, were Methodists. It's just recently a few of them have left the Methodist church and have joined up with the Adventists, you know. But we are Methodist supporters. On account of that, we try to live within the confines of the Christian religion. That is, love for your fellow men, love for God, do what is right, and so on. But we live in a very sinful world. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we should always ask for forgiveness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, in terms of some of the things you see changing over the years, you've been around for a while, so you see a lot of things changing. The way people get along, the families and all of that.
Well, as a matter of fact, let me tell you something. In the old days, my father was a farmer. After he left Chapel Yard, we call that place where he was living on the church land, Chapel Yard, Roman church then. They broke that church down and they built one somewhere else a little further on. But the old church was there all the time until eventually when they were on account of the airport. And so, well, in those days, the main crop in St. Vincent was sugar cane, because you had Mount Bentic going with sugar. Most of the other estates and small farmers was our route. So my father was a cultivator. First of all, he had a bit of cane, but it was a bit troublesome with cane. So he turned over to our route and cotton and other provisions, other crops, root crops, potatoes and other things and so on. Well, another thing he did, he always got quite a few animals, cows, goats, sheep and so on, and pigs. So we grew up in a way that we know almost everything about farming. As schoolboys, we learn to use the hoe, the cutlass, and the other tools, garden tools. We learn to milk the cow in the morning. We knew how to go and change, what we call changing the animals, tie them from one stake to the next. In those days, you didn't have to bring your animals around your home because of safety. You leave them out in the field. You never find anybody will go and take your animals behind your back. You can't do that now. It's something different. We eat provision. Well, as Indians, our main lunch on Sundays would be rice. As we always look forward to our rice on Sunday as Indians. But during the week, we eat ground provision, soup, anything we eat, yes. We used to go cassava, we know, baked farine, cassava bread. Sometimes you take the meal, you mix it with flour, and you make what you call dumpling, and you know all those sort of things. We grew up. So we didn't have any fancy life. We, as schoolboys, we went to school barefooted. In those days, there was no uniform for children. Marriaqua School. The only two schools that had uniform was the grammar school and the girls' high school. All the primary schools, you wear what you have, as long as it's clean. You go barefooted. Yes. One thing, you reach discipline was very strict in school. Not now I will see children after 9 o'clock taking their time to go to school. Not so, you know what it is. In the morning, we rush around, we look after our animals, we get our tea. In those days, if we have madongo, you make madongo bakes with cocoa and milk. We call it chocolate. And you have thing, you run down the river, you have a wash, you get dressed, and you reach to school before 9 o'clock. Because we have inspection. You line up, and girls in one line, boys in one, and the teacher will come and see whether you comb your hair or not. You know, some of those boys, especially the black boys, some of those boys, sometimes he'll push a pencil to the hair, and if the pencil can't go right through, he pull you out, he'll say, you didn't comb your hair. You know? Well, with us, with the straight hair, we didn't have no problem with that. Then you look at your nails. Your nails got to be trimmed. So if you dig potato in the morning, you make sure that you scrub them off properly with a bit of kerosene oil before you go to school. You can't go to school with some potato stain in your hand. You'll get licks. So those are the things we grew up.
Who are some of the other family surnames that you're connected to? Are you related to like the Deans, the
Oh,
Thomas
yes,
Deans,
well,
and-
listen. There are 8 brothers. 8 sons my father got, and so there are 7 besides myself. There is Vernon, Hamilton, Edwin, Cecil, Amos, Alfie, and Belford, and myself. I'm second, what you call second to the last. There is only one, Belford, who was younger than I am. And I had 4 sisters, Maud, Estelle, Elizabeth and Leah. When they were matured, the Deans came. That is Cheryl, uncle. We usually call him Taylor Dean, but his right name is Vincent Dean, because he was a tailor. And he wanted my sister to marry to, and my parents gave the consent. So they got married. I was a little boy, I remember. They got married. And they went and they lived up acres. After that, Cheryl's father, whose name was Jonathan, but they usually call him Percy. A place before he died, they used to refer to him as Yambo Dean, as he left over at acres there where he was living and lived down at Yambo. They used to refer to him as Yambo Dean. He came and he married to my second sister, Estella. That is Cheryl's mother. They bought quite a bit. Percy Dean bought quite a bit of land from Ford. First of all, he took up 65 acres of land. That whole area of land, you see, where Cheryl is living down there, and so on, come right up. But when they worked out the money, it was a little bit too heavy for him. So he came and asked my father to take part of it, because we had a piece of land adjacent to the estate. So my father decided to take 22 acres away from him. So my father bought 22 acres from Ford, and they divided the land. So Dean had 43 acres. Well, after that, after he died, the land was divided and so on, and some of the others sold out and things like that. Well, Cheryl is one who's still living on the land, you know, and some of the others sold out and so on. Yeah. Well, my other two sisters, they got married to two brothers too, two Bullocks. And the thing is the two Bullock, Harold and Chester. Chester mother and my mother are two sisters. And their father and my father were two brothers. So we were very close in the family line. But they came and they got married to two sisters, and both of them left up here and they lived down at Yambu, but they all died now. They all died.
So they were related to Henrik Bullock?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Henrik was the same one I'm referring to, my uncle, who did not want to take the title of Samuel. Yes, that was Henrik, grandfather. Because my uncle, his first name was Emmanuel. We used to refer to him as Man Samuel for short. He had, one of his sons was Cecil Bullock. So Cecil Bullock married to a woman from Park Hill. What was their name again? From Park Hill. I wonder if he's related to you also.
Possibly.
Yeah, most likely, you know. But anyway, Cecil married to a woman of Park Hill, an Indian woman from Park Hill, and they lived wrong at Marriaqua, and they had Henrik and the others and so on. So that's how it is.
Alright, well, anything else you want to mention that you want us to talk about before we finish up? Anything else in particular you want to put on record?
Well, I am very pleased. It's because of my old age and I don't move around that much. Otherwise, I would have taken a more active part in the movement which is called the Indian Heritage. But I always give as much support as I possibly can. And I think they should make a lot more contact with India, with the mother country. And I think the people in India would be very much pleased also to know that there are descendants of that country here who are very much appreciative whatever they have done also, and that they are quite willing to be close in relationship with that. Yes.
Well, we actually have already made that connection because we have another connection straight to India with the ambassador.
Yes. Well, that is good. That is good.
We always have exchanges.
Exchanges, yes.
The ambassador who is acting on behalf of the
Right.
So we have the connection in place now.
That is good.
See what we can,
that is good.
In terms of building the relationship and having people visiting the motherland and seeing a bit of the culture first and bringing some of that back home to us. So we can get refamiliarized with our roots.
Right. I am pleased to know that. Yes, I'm pleased to know that.
And thanks for explaining and talking to me about some of the things that are important to our history.
Well, boy, I tell you, I'm here. As a matter of fact, I got married very young, and I had my children. I went away and came back, but my first wife died.
Okay.
I married to a Khar, an Indian family living down the road there. Yes. And but that first wife died, and she died in 1990. In 1994, I got married to a black woman from New Delhi, close to Diamond. But that marriage did not last at all. That woman, I think I made a mistake, because one day when I stepped out, I went out, leaving her. We had nothing at all, When I came back, I met the wedding ring, on a table. And she was planning to pull out behind my back. She took her things and went back home. I went up there and spoke to her and so on. She didn't want to come. I said, yeah, all right, settle yourself down there. And from that time, I alone live here. Right now, all my children are married and so on. I don't know if you know Linda, who married to Murray Bullock. She's my daughter.
Okay.
When I was in England, I became a little naughty, so I had two children with an English girl up there. Linda is one of them, and a boy. The boy is Paul. He was down here last day, and he's married, and he's up in England.
Okay.
He's up in the Midland. Well, Linda came here. I brought both of them down. She won a scholarship. She went to the girls' high school. After she graduated, she started working at the National Commercial Bank. After that, she got married to Maury. Then after that, she went and worked with the Kingston Credit Union. She was there as a CEO. Then after, she went and became the CEO at this Royalty Bank, this offshore bank. But that bank has gone to nothing. Linda is also a lawyer.
Yes.
But she told me she hasn't applied for membership here yet.
Okay.
But she already passed her barrister.
Okay.
Yeah. But she's mostly versed with banking. She's mostly versed in banking. Yeah.
Thanks very much for
Oh, it has been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure. Nice meeting you.
Yes,
and I hope I'll see you again.
Yes, now I know where you're looking because I didn't know where to find you.
Yes.
So thanks again, and I hope that what the information that we shared here, we can be
All
able to
right.
share it with others as well. Okay.
Yes.